It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast to tell you that US Cellular is introducing US Mode. It's kind of like airplane mode, but it's for people. It's a way to set up your phone so it doesn't get in the way of people really being with each other. Block distractions and make way for real connection. Give it a try. Visit US Cellular in-store or online, and they'll help you set up your phone for US Mode for free, even if you're not a customer. Built for superior 5G connection and real human connection. US Cellular, built for us. Find out more at uscellular.com/find us.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back inside the lab to the Friday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. A lot to get to on today's episode, including what is going on with Shane Pinto and the Ottawa Senators. And we're taking a look at a few squads on the hot seat. Who's hot, who's cold once again, but in a bad way. Friday's big-time bets. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for the Friday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And thank you sincerely for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Steele, there's some very intriguing details coming out of this Shane Pinto story that you and I are going to talk about very quickly off the top. This is probably going to force his hand into signing his contract at a lower end that he didn't want. Very intriguing angle. I know you have some takes that I'm excited to hear about, but we're also going to take a look at some squads on the NHL hot seat. A number of teams are off to some poor starts, and yeah, it is early, but sooner or later, some of these teams are going to have to start hitting that panic button. And out west, Steele, Calgary and Edmonton might be already there. So we'll break that down Friday, 6-game betting board. Let's keep this money train rolling, Steele. You and I have been hitting some bets this week. Take it away, my friend, because I know you have a take on this Shane Pinto situation, which obviously came out today, 41-game suspension. Very, very interesting news out of a young player in Ottawa.
Yeah, it is. And, before we get into our opinions about the entire matter, we're not going to know exactly all the details of what transpired between Shane Pinto and these allegations and the investigation, everything. But I want to lay down the facts before we get to our opinions. So
I like it.
This all started around the time Shane Pinto was in Ottawa practicing with the team and then went back to Long Island amid the contract negotiations with the Ottawa Senators. Now, negotiations stopped because Pierre Dorion was made aware of the investigation that was going to take place and kept this under wraps while the NHL went through their process.
Interesting.
The league started investigating around that time because they were made aware of some unusual activity coming from Pinto's gambling account. And he was not accused of gambling on NHL games.
Right.
And that has now been confirmed to be true, that he was not gambling on NHL games. And again, we don't know exactly what transpired, but to give some context or some references, this is what Elliot Friedman said on his podcast earlier yesterday. He made the reference to a player from the Tennessee Titans in the NFL who was suspended this year for 6 games, was legally placing bets on other leagues, but because he placed those bets on grounds at the team facility, that was prohibited. That was not allowed, and that's why he was suspended. So that could be the case for what happened with Shane Pinto, where something along those lines could have happened. Again, I don't want to confirm anything. That's just a reference to what Elliot Friedman said and what could possibly have happened with this suspension. And again, I'm not saying that Pinto did that, but there was something that alarmed the NHL enough that they had to take action. And the suspension actually started when the Ottawa Senators played their first game this year. So he'll actually be eligible to return January 21st after the 41 games of the Ottawa Senators. And it seems like Shane Pinto is taking full responsibility of this. He's not going to appeal this decision. And I've even heard from a couple of people that it was actually negotiated down to 41 games or negotiated to 41 games from what it could have been. So those are the facts that we know of as of right now. Again, I don't believe we're going to get any more details or, very few details to come out from what actually happened and this whole entire investigation. With all of that being said, to me personally, if he was accused and he was found out to actually be gambling on NHL games, that's a different story. This would obviously be a suspension worthy punishment. Actually, if it were to be true, he probably would be banned from the NHL because they have a strict gambling policy on this type of things, like a lot of other leagues do as well. We've seen in the NFL over the last couple of years. Personally, though, the fact that they've said that he was not gambling on the NHL games, this strikes me as an overstep, an over suspension. And I want to bring it back to this. The NHL promotes gambling 24/7. It's on their jerseys. It's on their helmets. Ottawa actually had a sponsor helmet of Bet99 just a year ago. It's on the boards. It's every other commercial you see on TV.
Oh, it's everywhere.
They are shoving gambling down all the fans' throats, even on the players. And the way that I think about it is like, we're all humans first. We are all people first. Athletes get treated in a different way, obviously, because they are athletes. They're in the spotlight. But at the end of the day, they make a ton of money. But we are all people first. And even like this last week, I've been seeing LeBron James putting out his picks for the NFL games, every Sunday. If they come out and say that he was not gambling on the NHL games, I don't see in any way possible how he gets reprimanded for 41 games.
It's a very hefty punishment. The Department of Player Safety in general, the NHL in general, when they hand out suspensions, they don't exactly have the best track record over the last number of years. It seems like at times they're picking punishments by throwing darts at a dartboard steel. It has been very all over the place and inconsistent. We had the statement up there from Pinto a second ago. He's accepting everything, but I'm with you. And I also want to say this. This is what happens when you develop this market for gambling so quickly. And like you said, very poignantly, shoving it down everyone's throats. And that's everyone, fans, players in the game, front office staff, everyone. It's everywhere. And there's a time and a place for everything is what I would say. And I understand gambling at the facility is probably something you don't want to be doing. And I understand that suspension from that angle. But otherwise, if they're legally betting on sports that they have nothing to do with, I really don't see a problem with it. And I don't think the NHL should put themselves so closely to all of these major books without having something in place, or maybe having at least an approach with these athletes and knowing exactly what. Mind you, we don't know the full story 100%. We don't know exactly what the NHL is going to end up doing. Maybe, I don't know can he even appeal this? I don't think he can even appeal it. So it's an overstep. I agree with you. I think there's a time and a place for everything. I think with all the changes with gambling, the NHL has to continue to change. That's not something they've been able to do either, Steele. I really like your takes on this, by the way. I can tell you've done your research for today, and I appreciate it. If you're good with it, though, we'll head to break and come back and talk about some of these teams on the hot seat, or what?
Yeah, let's do that.
Giddy up, because we got a couple of big-time reads coming up, so buckle up, my friends. Today's episode is brought to you by Parkview Advance. As a business owner, you realize there are times when receivables might fall behind, but that doesn't mean you need to fall behind on vendor payments, payroll, or rent. For more than 25 years, Parkview Advance has helped business secure working capital. From $5,000 to $1.5 million, Parkview Advance can improve your working capital in as little as 24 hours. It's a much easier process than you might imagine. We invite many entrepreneurs that are Locked On NHL fans to learn more by calling them at 203-675-0071 or go to parkviewadvance.com. If your business needs working capital, call Parkview Advance today. Parkview Advance, helping businesses with their working capital. Go to parkviewadvance.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Jace Medical. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world today, Steele, and it's important to be prepared from the unrest in the Middle East, fires in Hawaii, hurricanes around Florida, earthquakes across the world. You can never know when you have that stability of 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. Jace Medical now offers customizability for your Jace case with dozens of add-on medications. Choose the medications that best fit you and your family family's unique needs. I've been on vacation steel in Costa Rica. You never know when you get a bad cut. You get really sick. You want to have the medications on hand, and with the Jace case, you have just that. Go to jacemedical.com and enter code Locked On at checkout for $20 off discount on your order. That's promo code Locked On at JASEmedical.com.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We really appreciate all that love and support. Continue to hit the subscribe button, leave a follow, leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode, Friday edition. Got some crazy news coming out of Ottawa. We got some teams that we want to rattle off. We just talked about some of the hottest teams in the NHL.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the coldest teams in the
on
NHL.
the hot seat,
teams
baby.
on the hot seat that are not living up to expectations this year or just playing poorly overall. I'll throw it over to you, Flip, because I pretty much took over that Shane Pinto conversation.
That's okay. Hey,
what's that first team you're looking at?
You took it over very nicely, Steele, but I'm taking a look at this Calgary Flames squad. I was buying into this team bouncing back, Huberdeau bouncing back, the whole situation with the coach. I thought Markstrom was going to be better, and okay. They're 2-4-1, I believe. Is that what I have up there? I hope that's right. Steele, I was in here. I was in the lab making graphics all day. I got to make sure these numbers are right. Calgary is 2-4-1.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm looking at is they've now lost 3 straight games. Nazem Kadri is really, really underperforming. Yeah. I think that power play needs to get it going, and I know that they've had their issues scoring goals, Steele, but this team is not good enough, not deep enough anymore, and you've got players calling out the team. Was it Zadorov, I believe, called out his team the other day?
Yeah.
This is a really messy situation already developing here in Calgary. And to me, after what they did last year, I think it was like 23 one-goal games, and I think they ended up that they lost. And after a season like that and just poor performances all around, I think this team came into the year on the hot seat. 3 straight losses, overall poor performance, poor goal differential. They're a team for me that's on the hot seat, and I think you also have them on your list.
Yeah, I also have the Calgary Flames on my list, and this is a team that, again, from what I heard from Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri before the season started about their mentality heading into this season, wanting to be in Calgary, having those long-term big contracts for them. I was backing them up because Jonathan Huberdeau, before he got to Calgary, was one of the best playmakers, one of the best players in the league, and he has really just shut off his entire game. And the thing that's going on for me is they're showing troubling similarities from last year under Daryl Sutter. Again, it's only the first 5-6 games in the league, but Stars aren't producing enough offense. Poor puck management. They're out shooting their opposition, but not winning the games. And again, go back to Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri. Their 2 highest paid players are combined for 5 points and minus 15 on the season. Like you said, Nikita Zadorov sounded off on the team, just under a week ago about the poor play, the lack of identity, and just not working as
those are harsh comments, Steele.
Those are harsh comments. Honestly, Zadorov should be the one saying them because he's probably been one of the best players on the team so far, other than a few other offensive players for the Calgary Flames. But none, again, just poor puck management all around so far from the Calgary Flames. It just seems like they can't figure it out. They can't seem to click together. It's a puzzle piece that just doesn't want to fit.
Speaking of which, let's stay in the West. Let's stay in Alberta for one of my teams that I think is clear. And we've talked a lot about Edmonton over the last couple of weeks, so I don't need to I'm going to keep this one brief because we know the goaltending has been a mess. But more importantly, I would say, Steele, and I don't know if you've read any about this, that this new defensive system that Jay Woodcroft's put in place is part of the reason why this team has been struggling in its own end. I'm really not here for that conversation because it was your choice to implement this new defensive system.
Yeah.
And clearly a 4.35 goals against for Jack Campbell, a 4.29 goals against, and both goalies having save percentages under 900 is not going to help your cause either. But what are you doing bringing in a new system in the off season and this team isn't ready to go with it. I don't understand the approach here. It's making me question some of these coaching decisions. Leon Draisaitl, 11 points in 6 games, beast. Connor McDavid off to a pretty good start, 8 points in 5 games. Yeah, you want to see him shoot the puck more. It's the mistake steal, it's the blue line, and it's this decision to implement this quote-unquote new defensive system that just has me scratching my head and definitely has this Edmonton team on the hot seat early.
Yeah, I put out a poll the other day, said what's more wrong right now with the Edmonton Oilers, coaching or goaltending. There was only 40 votes on it, but coaching got 53% and goaltending got 47% of the votes on that poll. So it's clearly it's almost a 50-50 split between coaching and goaltending, but Jay Woodcroft just implementing something that isn't working right now. And just, again, this is a team that you don't really have to do. Yeah, you're still the head coach, but you've got the 2 best players on the NHL. Like, what are you doing wrong that's getting this team to a poor start? Obviously, the goaltending has been terrible, but let's continue to stay in the West because I've got another Canadian team, and that's the Winnipeg Jets. One of the reasons why I think this is a team that's in the hot seat right now. Yeah,
this is an interesting one. I want to hear it.
This is an interesting one. It's more the fact to do of their low attendance at home games right now.
Yeah,
their games against the games against the Vegas Golden Knights and LA Kings just a week ago or a couple days ago drew in less than 12,000 fans, the lowest attendance rate since arriving from Atlanta in 2012. So that is not a good sign for Winnipeg, a team that has already lost or relocated once before throughout their history. And on top of that, we got the picture of Connor Hellebuck out here. Yeah. He's not looking like Connor Hellebuck right now. He's looking like Jack Campbell out there. That's a pretty harsh term, but again, the stats are not denying it. He's not playing his game defensively. He's not getting a ton of help. Nikolai Ehlers has just been, again, a ghost out there. He's got 2 assists in 6 games, -3. They're getting some good looks out of Velarde and Iafallo so far, but if they really want to be a cup contending team, are they a playoff team? Maybe a bubble team. But do they want to, if they want to be a cup contending team, they need to figure something out. And again, I don't know if it's a leadership problem. They give the captaincy to Adam Lowry. Maybe it's taking him a little bit to get, fully adjusted to being that number 1 guy that everyone looks to now to get going. Again, you sign Scheifele, you sign Hellebuck to these long-term deals, get them going. They got to get themselves going somehow.
Yeah, that might be indicative right there of what you and I have been struggling to put our finger on what's been going on in Winnipeg. They also are now dealing with this Rick Bowness situation. His wife is ill. He stepped away from the team. You have your goaltender struggling a little bit. This would be, if there was one team that I were to quote unquote disagree with you on, because I don't think this is a poor take in any stretch, this might be the only one that I would say I think they're okay for now. I think they're 3-3 as well. Although everything that you're breaking down makes sense, and I think it will catch up to them sooner or later, especially if those big guns do not start to fire, and I mean in net as well, Steele. So let's see what happens there, because I think they have enough to turn it around. When we turn it around after the break, though, I'll hit you with my 2 Eastern Conference teams on the hot seat very quickly, and then we'll fire off our Friday bets.
Sounds about right. I also got 2 Eastern Conference teams as well. Big time bets coming up very, very shortly. But this episode is also brought to you by Sleeper. The NHL season is finally here, and we got you covered here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We absolutely love the NHL, and we know that you do too. That's why you tune in Monday through Friday. And that's also why we want to tell you about the Sleeper app. The Sleeper app is the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. And it's my go-to, as well as Flips, for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your money on daily fantasy, and fans can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB on the Sleeper app. The NHL has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Connor McDavid when he comes back from injury, Alex Ovechkin, who's getting on the score sheet now, Crosby and Makar, and many more is at your fingertips. Just pick more or less on stats for these stars, on stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and many more options. You heard me right, fantasy hockey fans. 100-time payout on the Sleeper app. So start paying attention and get your picks right, and you could win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details.
Bang.
Hey everyone, Chris from Locked On Avalanche here. If you like using debit over credit, I just learned about something that's definitely a game changer. Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases, which means you can get cash back on NHL tickets or head-to-toe hockey gear to make this season a total win. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
Nailed it, Steele.
Thank you. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day.
Boom.
Continue to hit that subscribe, leave a follow, and leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support.
Mm-hmm.
These teams are going to need some support right now because they are getting to some very poor starts right now. I'll start off with, I don't have too much to say on the Washington Capitals. I really all I want to say is this team is pretty slow, pretty old right now. They're one of the oldest teams in the NHL. And I watched that game against the New Jersey Devils the other day. They were up 3-0 after the first and then allowed 3 goals in under 2 minutes and were down 4-3 after the second period. They ended up, regrouping heading into the third. They still won that game 6-4, but it was a brutal performance all around, especially with that rookie goaltender Shepherd in the crease, not giving him a ton of support.
They left him out to dry for sure.
They left him out to dry on a
couple of softies.
All those goals, it just seemed like the defensemen or the entire group out there was just standing around looking at the puck while the Devils were shooting it at him. So, definitely a poor start. 10.5% on the power play. Their penalty kill is not any better. 69.6% on the penalty kill. So they're not getting it done on special teams. They're not getting it done on the man advantage. And this is a team that, we had at the bottom of the Metro. I think it was it was either the last or the second last team we had in the Metro.
Agreed.
And right now it's looking to be that way for the Washington Capitals moving forward.
I think we had the Flyers or I think it was the
Flyers last.
And then we had CBJ or Washington interchange there in that 7th spot. Anyway, the problem here is with what all you're saying adds up is the offense isn't there to pick up this slack defensive play. It isn't there to pick up the goalies. 12 goals scored so far this year, Steele. This is not going to be good enough, and we know it all runs through number 8. But when the St. Louis Blues and San Jose Sharks are the only 2 teams that have scored less goals than you, you're not going to be in line to win games. And thankfully, a team right around them in the Pittsburgh Penguins is also struggling right now. And, we talked about Washington, so Washington's on my list as well. So let me just finish off my teams with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, in my opinion, Steele, they bring in a lot of new faces, and maybe that's why we need to give this team a little bit more time. But Nola Chari, 0 points. Jeff Carter, 0 points. And I know those guys aren't your dynamos on offense, but they're going to need to prop up that top 6 and do something. This Pittsburgh team was very mediocre right there in the middle of the pack last year on power play, right there in the middle of the pack on penalty kill. And that's basically what they're lining up for this year. And it's not going to be good enough. And I really do think bringing in Erik Karlsson, we all love the move. This time last year, Erik Karlsson already had 3 or 4 goals. He's only got 1 so far. He needs to be better, in my opinion, Steele. They paid a hefty price to bring him in. I think they need to be, and are paying him as well. Let's get this guy going. To me, it's got to be special teams, and they got to figure it out in a hurry. So to me, given that window for winning is closing, much like it's already slammed shut, it seems, in Washington, they got to get it going in a hurry. And to me, they're definitely on the hot seat with a poor start. And I think, let me just pull this up quick time. In the division, they are in last place, 1 point behind Washington. So things aren't exactly pretty in Pittsburgh either.
Not pretty, and Tristan Jarry has been very disappointing as well. Only 1 win, 3 losses. He has, again, one of those guys that just looks like a shell of himself out there, just not going his way, but hopefully it turns around for the Penguins so they can make another deep playoff run. One of the last with this group who have been with them for a very long time, their entire NHL career. Right. My last team before we get to big time bets, I have got the New York Islanders, 2-2-1 to start the season, 13 goals for, 17 goals against. And I have them on here just because a big part of that is their power play percentage. Again, one of the worst power plays like they were last year. I've always said, especially when it comes to the New York Islanders, defense wins championships. And I still stand by that because it's one of the crucial parts in order to win any championship. Right now, they have absolutely zero consistency at both ends of the ice. Like one game, you'll get great goaltending and great defensive plays from Ilya Sorokin and like Adam Pelech and Noah Dobson, but have no offense. Then the next game, they'll get a surge in offense and have no goaltending and no defensive plays or no big defensive plays to keep them in the game. If you look at the games they've played so far, the two of the games that they've lost, they had 4 goals, but they got slapped around by the Devils and the Colorado Avalanche. So there's no consistency on both ends of the ice right now for the New York Islanders. And a big part of that as well is their power play sucks. It still sucks. 12.5% on the power play. They're 2 for 16, tied for 6th worst in the NHL right now. So for me, the New York Islanders, I'm still an Islanders fan. I still think they have a chance at making the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs, I still think they can make a deep playoff run because they have one of the best goaltenders in the world. But if they can't get any offense, you're not going to win games. And that's the big part of it.
Yeah, and it's almost a shame that Sorokin is, he's been standing on his head at times. He's been making some really, 10-bell saves on the regular. I guess I also really need to see a lot more out of Matt Barzal. And, I don't have his
Horvat too.
Yeah, Horvat's been disappointing. And I know I haven't watched a ton of Islander hockey this year, so maybe, Islanders fans tell us if we're off here. But I think overall, to me, why I would say, yeah, hot seat, I get it for sure. They need to be a lot better. I kind of expected them to be right here in this mix, struggling to score offensively, bubble playoff team. I expected them to be better, and I think they will turn it around just because of how good Sorokin is. But I like this take, Steele. The offense has got to do something. And this is very similar situations and very similar storylines for a lot of these teams over the last couple of years, right? Islanders can't score. We're looking at Pittsburgh on the special teams. Got to be better. Edmonton's goaltenders can't figure it out. Calgary can't stay consistent with their offense. These are all very similar themes that these teams have been dealing with. And I think they're going to need to wake up in a hurry because there's a lot of squads around them that have figured out their weaknesses and are putting the pedal down.
Yes, they are. And we're going to have to put our pedal down with big time bets because we are in full speed right now over this last week. We are hitting bets. And it's been nice to see. It's been very nice to see. So if you don't mind, I'll actually just rattle off all 3 of my picks.
Fire away.
Starting off with the Canucks, the Blues on the puck line. The odds aren't out right now, but Blues puck line plus 1.5 against the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks have lost 5 of their last 6 matchups against the St. Louis Blues. And Jordan Binnington, it pains me to say this, but he's been playing well to start the season. So first pick, Blues puck line at plus 1.5 against the Vancouver Canucks.
Okay.
And 6 out of the 7, they've won by more than by 2 goals. So Vegas Golden Knights puck line at minus 1.5. And then my lock of the night, I'm going to take the Minnesota Wild on the money line against the Washington Capitals. They've won their last 4 matchups against the Capitals, 2 of them on the road as well. So Capitals are just playing bad hockey right now. They squeaked out a win against the Devils on a back-to-back, but I'm going to take the Wild money line for my lock.
Love the lock of the night, and thank you for taking my explanation very nicely. The Wild have scored 14 goals against the Capitals in their last 3 games, so they're clearly getting it done. That's bad news if it's, what's his name, the 27-year-old AHL guy who just came up. Shepard. He might be in trouble again if it's him. It's probably going to be Kemper, but anyway, I got Minnesota on the money line. Also, they're playing plus money right now for some reason. I'm going to take that all day. Second pick, I'm taking a look at this Buffalo, New Jersey game. I wanted to go over. I wanted to maybe take Jersey, but I got to go to the NHL point leader in Jack Hughes. And when I dig into his numbers in 13 career games against the Buffalo Sabres, 7 goals, 7 assists for 14 points. Give me Jack Hughes. Anytime goal. I think he gets his. He's been distributing. I think he's going to start shooting the puck a little bit more. Jack Hughes, anytime goal. The odds are up and down. Make sure you get the best one. Lock of the night, Steele. This is a little bit of a tricky board for me, number one. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was.
But when I'm taking a look at this LA Kings squad who just laid a 6-piece on Arizona 2 nights ago, they're back at Arizona again. They've won. They've taken points in, let me just bring this up. They've taken points in 9 of the last 10 games against the Arizona Coyotes, including 7 victories. So hit me with the LA Kings on the money line on the road, minus 129 right now. I think this LA Kings team is starting to figure it out, at least offensively, putting up 5 goals, 7 goals in, 6 goals out of 3 of the last 4 games. I think the offense gets going again against Arizona. Give me them for my lock of the night.
and hopefully Cam Talbot and Phoenix Copley come around so they can feel safe on the back end of the ice as well moving forward. We know they got some studs out there in the offensive group, but I like your lock of the night. I also like the Jack Hughes anytime goal. I might even dabble on Tyler Toffoli anytime goal.
He's been on fire.
He's been on fire the last 2 games, hat trick, and then a 2-goal game against the Washington Capitals as well. Those are the big time bets for Friday night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time is when you can find our episodes on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. So again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. Have a great weekend out there. Good luck with all your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.
JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com, code LOCKEDON. That's JamesAllen.com, code LOCKEDON.
The NHL season is here, and the best way to find all the insights and reactions for every team all season long is with Locked On NHL. Don't miss a second of the season. Available every day for 30 minutes on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Hey, Prime members, you can listen to this Locked On podcast ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today.